In the far reaches of the desert kingdom of Virelia, where gold-paved streets met crumbling ruins and time itself seemed to pause beneath the heat, there lived a man in a clay jar. Yes, a jar. It was no ordinary jar, mind you. It stood 6 feet tall, smooth as glass but thick and coarse like sun-dried mud, and it sat in the shadow of the palace walls, tucked against the alley beside the royal library. The man who lived in it was called Ruen. He had no wealth, no family, and no last name. Only a voice that spoke like sand rustling over stone and eyes that glimmered with laughter and mystery. Most dismissed him as a madman, a hermit, or a street illusion. Children tossed pebbles at his jar for fun. Merchants ignored his presence. But every morning, just as the sun kissed the city's highest spire, Ruen would rise from his jar, stretch like a cat, and greet the day with a grin as if he had been crowned king in his sleep. Rumors swirled about him. Some said he was a disgraced scholar. Others, a powerful sorcerer who had punished himself with poverty. A few whispered he had made a pact with a desert spirit and was waiting for some divine sign. Ruen never denied any of it. He simply said, "I live in this jar because the world is too big, too loud, and too foolish. This jar is enough." But one morning, everything changed. Queen Virelia, ruler of Virelia, stood atop her alabaster balcony, her golden veil fluttering in the wind, looking out over her city with eyes full of sorrow. She had ruled for nearly 20 years with fairness and wisdom, but a recent betrayal by her closest counselor had left her shaken. He had stolen half the treasury and fled into the northern wastes. Her trust in nobles, advisors, and scholars had crumbled like ancient stone. So she sent out a decree. "I have listened to the highborn for too long. Let the commoners speak. I shall grant one wish to the wisest among them, one wish only. Let them step forward." The city buzzed. From bakers to bricklayers, tailors to thieves, people lined up for days, hoping to earn the Queen's favor with stories of loss, dreams of power, or desperate pleas. Some asked for riches. Others begged for love, healing, even vengeance. But none impressed the Queen. Not until the man from the clay jar arrived. He was led by guards into the throne chamber, barefoot, his robes patched with ink stains and dust. His back was straight, his face serene. The nobles sneered from the balconies above. Virelia, veiled in blue silk, regarded him curiously from her golden seat. "You are the one who sleeps in a clay jar," she asked. "I live," Ruen corrected, smiling faintly. "Sleep is only a part of it." The Queen's lips twitched. "Then speak. You are granted one wish. Anything in this realm or beyond. What does the man in the jar desire?" The room went quiet. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Ruen stepped forward and bowed his head. "My queen, I wish for a new lid." The silence shattered into gasps and murmurs. "A lid?" Queen Virelia repeated, lifting an eyebrow. "Yes," Ruen said. "My old one cracked last summer. When the wind howls, it stirs the dust and blows sand into my bedding. It would be most appreciated if I had a new one, solid, curved properly, maybe with a little latch so it doesn't clatter." The nobles burst into laughter. Even the guards exchanged bewildered looks. But Queen Virelia did not laugh. "Why not ask for a house?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Or land, or coin, or position. I would have given you all three." "I have no need," Ruen said with a shrug. "A house has walls too wide. Land needs guarding. Coins invite thieves. In my jar, I have all I need. A view of the sky, warmth in the winter, shade in the summer, and quiet for thought. But the lid is important." Queen Virelia stared at him for a long while. Then, slowly, she stood. "And if I grant you this new lid, what will you give me in return?" Ruen smiled. "A story, if your grace will allow it." "Speak." He stepped closer, voice lowering. There was once a prince who sought a bird made of stars. He hunted it for decades, crossing oceans, deserts, and mountains. He lost friends, sleep, and even his health. At last, he found the bird in a cage inside a cottage. A simple man had caught it without trying. He'd merely sat still long enough, and the bird came to rest beside him. The prince, enraged, demanded the man release it. But the man said, "If you truly wanted the bird, you would have stayed still long ago. What you wanted wasn't the bird, it was the chase." Ruen met the queen's eyes. "You have chased wisdom through advisors, wealth through wars, loyalty through fear. None have satisfied you. Perhaps now, your grace, it is time to sit still and listen." A hush fell again. The queen's hands tightened around the folds of her robes. Then, she laughed. Not mockingly, but richly, deeply, as if a long-forgotten part of her had just woken up. "You are wiser than all my counsel," she said, stepping down from her throne. "You shall have your lid, Ruen of the jar. And I shall send it personally." The next morning, a royal craftsman arrived at the alley with a polished bronze lid lined with velvet and carved with stars. It fit the jar perfectly. But more than that, Queen Virelia began to visit. At first, she came under a veil, accompanied by one silent guard. Then alone, sometimes at night. She and Ruen would speak for hours about poetry, the stars, and the minds of men. She asked no advice, but always left with clarity. Months passed. Ruen never stepped foot outside his alley, but word of him spread across the kingdom. Ambassadors came hoping for his insight. Generals asked his thoughts on strategy. He answered only if they brought something in return, a riddle, a song, or a story. He demanded no gold, only thought. And one morning, he was gone. The jar sat empty, clean, and sealed. At its base was a note written in exquisite calligraphy. "A jar is only a home if one chooses to stay. My thoughts have grown too large to fit inside now. It is time to stretch." Queen Virelia kept the jar inside the royal library, a glass case built around it, untouched, undisturbed. Above it, a plaque read, "Here lived Ruen, the man who needed nothing, yet gave everything." And from that day on, the queen kept one seat open at every royal council. A reminder that wisdom, true wisdom, doesn't always sit on thrones. Sometimes, it sleeps in clay jars and asks only for a lid.